So I just found out that Claremont McKenna decisions came out yesterday, and I thought they were coming out April 1st, but apparently not, so I'm checking it right now. Oh my gosh. Okay, log in. Status update. I got in! Yay! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! That's awesome! Hey guys, so just recently I found out that I got into Claremont McKenna, which is a really awesome undergraduate college that's down over in LA, and it's like super tiny, like not a lot of people know about it, but it's a school that honestly was actually on #1 on my college list, and so I just wanted to make a quick video kind of talking about why I decided to really like apply to Claremont McKenna and why I really felt that it was a school for me, and kind of how that's fitting into my college search with some of the other schools that I've gone into. So it's crazy for me to think that back in August I didn't even know that Claremont McKenna existed, and it wasn't until I got an email from them with them inviting me to apply for this like fly-in program thing where basically they pay you to fly in and visit their school and kind of like get a little sneak peek at what it's like to be a student there. So it wasn't until they sent me that email inviting me to apply for that that I even like heard of them at all. And so I got this email and I just thought, oh, like cool, this could be a free trip to LA, like, you know, like let's sign up for it, whatever. And so I go to sign up for it, and then there's like a bunch of essays I have to write, and one of them is essentially an essay that just says like, why CMC, why choose Claremont McKenna, why do you want to come visit us? And I was like, oh shoot, like I should probably have something to say for this. And so I started doing some research into the school, and then I found out that this school was literally like the perfect fit for me. I am interested in studying public policy, and they have an incredible public policy and government program. Like that's one of the main focuses of the school, and so it was really awesome with that. It had a very small student body of around like just over 1,000 students, which seems really small. That's like smaller than my high school. But then with the other 4 Claremont schools there, you know, like Scripps, Harvey Mudd, Pomona, and I'm forgetting one. But with all those schools there, basically it's like a medium-sized university feel with like 5,000 undergraduates. So I continued to look into it, and I realized that, oh shoot, they have like such great alum networks and all this stuff, and so I really started falling in love with this school. So basically then fast forward to September, I found out that I got into this program and I was super excited to go, but then I found out, checking my calendar, that my school had actually planned our homecoming week to be during the same time, which was a huge conflict for me because, you know, I was the director of our class skit in the homecoming assembly, which was like a huge thing. I was on the cheer team and we had our whole homecoming performance. Basically I was doing like all of these things that was right around that time, and so I really could not miss even like 2 days out of this week. And so basically I emailed them and said, hey, like thank you so much for this opportunity, but unfortunately my school changed our schedule, and so I'm not able to come and go. And they emailed me back saying, hey, we actually still really want you to come visit. We'll still pay for your plane ticket and everything, but how about we just bring you in like late October instead? And so I was like, oh darn, like okay, sure, that'd be awesome. And so I hop on a plane, go visit. Anyway, so I knew I was gonna have an interesting experience here when I stepped out of the airport and realized that it was the director of admissions, like the entire office of admissions, who was coming and picking me up. And so he pulled up in like his Chevy or whatever, and literally he had like his kids' car seats in the back. And so my mind was just like blown, because here was a person who was literally in charge of the entire admissions department coming to pick up some random kid to go visit their school. Like it was just insane, the amount of like VIP-ness that I was already experiencing just in like my first hour being there. And so he comes and picks me up, we talk, have a good conversation in the car, and then I end up going and meet my like admissions counselor or admissions officer, and then I go and grab lunch with her, and she's awesome, we have an amazing conversation, and then they introduce me to my host and all this stuff, and I continue to like have like this super specialized experience because I'm the only prospective student there. And so they really like pampered me. I got to go to the AF, which is like this kind of presentation thing that they have where you eat like this fancy dinner, and then you hear this really like various cool speakers talk and share about interesting topics. So I had this whole experience, and then my host was really cool, and every single like meal I had, whether it was like breakfast, lunch, dinner, was planned so that they had various students at the school like eating with me who were doing things that I was interested in. And so, you know, I filled out the survey and I said, oh sure, like I'd be interested in the student newspaper. So then they arranged for me to go and like meet with literally like the editor of the student newspaper there. And I hung out with him. Or they had, you know, me eat dinner with students who did study abroad in Germany and all this stuff. And so the amount of like specific care and attention that they gave to me really made me feel that if I went to this school, I wouldn't just be like another number, I wouldn't just be, you know, another kid in the shadows, but instead like I would get to have a very specialized experience because there's only like 1,300 students in this entire school. I really just fell in love with the school and the amount of resources that they had. Even though like Stanford had been my #1 school for the past, you know, spring and summer, at this point it kind of switched and Claremont McKenna became my #1 school. And I came home from this trip just like ecstatic about Claremont McKenna. But then I kind of encountered a very difficult situation where, you know, I fell in love with Claremont McKenna. I wanted to make sure that I got in there. But the only option I had to really like ensure my admittance was to apply early decision, which is binding. And I didn't want to apply early decision because I was already planning on applying early action to Stanford because I figured that that would be able to show Stanford that I was actually very serious about wanting to go to a school, and it might possibly boost my chance of admissions by, you know, some fraction of a percent. And so I basically called the director of admissions back over at Claremont McKenna and told him my situation where, you know, I wanted to apply early action to Stanford, but I also wanted Claremont McKenna to know that they were my #1 school, and I didn't know what to do in this situation because I felt so torn. And so basically he told me to just, you know, apply regular decision to Claremont McKenna and just let them know if Stanford rejected me and if I wanted to change my status. Like there's some weird kind of things that they said, but basically he like explained that like they really wanted me as a student there and felt that I would be able to contribute really well on campus. I kind of went into the winter then with Claremont McKenna very fresh on my mind, and Stanford is kind of like this school that seemed impossible, right? This kind of like fairy tale. And even though I love Claremont McKenna, I still kind of really like Stanford, but I kind of pushed it off because I thought it was unrealistic for me to think that I could ever go there. And so when I got into Stanford in December, I was like ecstatic, and I kind of had to stop for a second, reevaluate why I liked certain schools other than others. And I realized that kind of the reason why I fell in love with Claremont McKenna so much, in addition to it being like an amazing school and giving me such an amazing experience there, was also because of a lot of fear and reservations I had about Stanford. You know, I was afraid of the idea of getting rejected and having my heart crushed, and so I almost didn't want to put too much of my hope into it and make it my #1 school because I was afraid of that feeling of rejection. And so instead I kind of went to like my safety school, which was crazy thinking that Claremont McKenna could be a safety school when it has still like a freaking like 12% acceptance rate or whatever. But it, like, I could tell that they really wanted me there, and so I kind of just was like, oh, like this is my home. Stanford, like who cares about them? And so after I got into Stanford, I kind of realized that why I liked Claremont McKenna so much and what made it my #1 school was like 80% it being an awesome school, but also 20% me being afraid of making Stanford my #1 school. I guess really what this whole story is kind of showing is that like these schools, like their quality was never changing. These schools always existed, they're always amazing, and I really think that I would have amazing opportunities and experiences at any school that I chose, especially between those two. But also like how I value them and how I rank them is extremely like relative and subject to being changed by, you know, my experience there, how they really like reach out to me, but also like my own kind of self-assessment of what's best for me and kind of like my likelihood of getting in and stuff. And so what I would say to anyone out there who is, you know, in the midst of their college decisions process, or maybe they're starting to think about what schools they want to apply to next year and all this stuff, I would say just like to know that like a lot of it is going to be relative, and that really like your attitudes about certain schools can change. There could be a school that you literally never heard about that becomes your #1 school. There could be a school that's been your #1 forever that then moves down the list. So I'd really just encourage people to be open-minded about various possibilities and opportunities, and also not to be too paralyzed by, you know, fear or anxiety about the college admissions process. Because in this moment, back in, you know, like November, I almost chose to do early decision to Claremont McKenna and basically throw away my shot at getting into Stanford, Yale, any other school. But I decided to take the risk and not do that, and I ended up getting into all of these schools. And so even though that story might look different for you, what I would say is that the message is still universal, that, you know, it's okay to be open to that sense of rejection, because ultimately you will end up at the school that you're supposed to be at, and just don't settle, basically is what I would say, but instead really be open-minded to all these different possibilities and opportunities. So that's where I'm at right now. In terms of my college decisions process, I'm about kind of leaning 90% for Stanford, 5% for Claremont McKenna, 2.5% for Yale, and 2.5% for USC with the full tuition scholarship. So that's kind of where I'm at, but basically in the next few days I'm going to have to click that accept admissions decision to Stanford or choose somewhere else. And so it's looking more and more likely every day that it is going to be Stanford that I'm going to be deciding on, but again, I wanted to wait and hear back from all these schools because I'm all about, you know, pursuing opportunities, being open-minded, and so yeah, that's where I'm at. Anyway, so my plan is to continue to post about once a week or so. Again, I'm like super busy, I got a job on weekends and all this stuff, so I don't have the most amount of free time. However, I do really want to share with you guys my whole, you know, college essays, my activities, my grades, all that stuff. So stay tuned for all of that. And also I wanted to let you guys know to please, you know, like DM me, message me on Instagram if you guys have any questions or anything like that. I'd be more than happy to help you all out with that because, you know, I think that a lot of the reason why I'm at where I am now is because I reached out for help from other people. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.